Hey guys, Robert here. Thank you for joining me on a journey that I've considered going on for a long time, and that is to create a podcast or a stream of videos that would be a benefit not only to the folks that are watching and listening, but also an encouragement to pastors like myself. And with these videos or with these podcasts, here's just the main idea. I want to step beyond maybe what some people would consider kind of the curtain, step behind the scenes a little bit, and just have some real conversations with some real pastors. These guys are regular guys like myself, pastoring normal churches all across the nation, and some that are local to my area, some that I know from my past, and maybe some that I'm just now getting to know. So thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope you'll hang with me as we go through and we have many conversations with folks that some you know and some you love and some that you really need to get to know. So let's talk. Well, hey there, I am here with Pastor Stewart McCarter of Calvary Baptist Church. Pastor Stewart, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, as good can be. So why don't you introduce, I said your name already, so
right.
You can't say that. Introduce maybe your family, just kind of give a little information about yourself, some history, that kind of thing.
History? Okay. I was born many, many years ago in Charleston, South Carolina. Grew up there, actually in North Charleston, if you're familiar with the area at all. And anyway, I grew up there eventually. Married a girl named Janice, who was from North Augusta, South Carolina. And now we've been married 32 years, going on 33 this year. We have 3 grown children and 5 grandchildren.
North Augusta.
Yes.
I feel like I've heard of that.
Yes, it's across the river from Augusta,
Okay.
Georgia. So you got Augusta, Georgia,
Okay,
and then
I
you cross
gotcha.
the Savannah River,
Right.
which goes up the whole west side of the state of South Carolina and separates South Carolina from Georgia. And she was born, grew up in North Augusta. Such a small town, no hospital there, so she's technically born in Georgia, but
Gotcha. All right.
grew up in South Carolina.
And so you're at Calvary Baptist Church,
Yes.
Stanton, Virginia.
Stanton, Virginia.
Why don't
Spelled
you-
Staunton. For those around the world, it's pronounced differently and
Yeah.
spelled, and everybody here knows it, but that doesn't change the fact.
So Stanton is pronounced ant with an AU. So how
Right.
do you say aunt or aunt?
I personally call every sister of a mother or father an aunt.
You say aunt. Okay.
I say aunt.
So you're consistent at least.
I am, yes. But yeah, parts of Virginia, they do say aunt.
Right.
Parts of where I'm from say aunt as well, but I grew up saying aunt. So.
Yeah. So describe the area of your church and just in general.
As I said, I grew up in Charleston, which is a coastal town, and I love the ocean, but my daddy came from the upper state of South Carolina, which is close to the same range of mountains that goes across several states. And we came here 3 years ago. We love it. We're in the valley between in the shadow of the Blue Ridge Mountains and Alleghenies. I always have to pause. I always want to say that wrong. So we're in a beautiful spot in America, one of the most beautiful spots, and just love it. And we're in what they know, Stanton is known as the Queen City of the Shenandoah Valley. And it's a gorgeous place, a lot of super nice people, and
Yeah. Okay.
glad to be here.
Yeah. It's certainly And so obviously I live here too. So it's pretty nice.
It is. Places to hike and fish and do a lot of outdoor things, which I like.
And you've been around 3 years?
Yeah, a little more than 3 years now, which
Okay.
is crazy. I feel like I'm still trying to get going, but that's a long story, too
Right.
much for today. But we are moving, and of course, coronavirus hit.
Did you say you're moving? You're moving away?
No, the church.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere.
I heard it. You
They
heard
may
it first.
kick me out, but I'm going to go kicking and screaming if they do.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. And so
I'm too old.
I imagine that now that everything is online, that there was, as with everybody else in the world that
Right.
has been meeting on every weekend normally and has to be online now, that there's certain struggles and challenges.
Yes.
What's been some of the biggest challenges for you?
Yeah, well, just in general speak, for our area, we wouldn't be in general a larger church, but for our area, we kind of are. But having said that, we never were as technically savvy. There's an old joke where a preacher said, "I'm pulling our church into the 20th century," and someone said, "But it's the 21st century, one century at a time." So we just had never
Nice.
kind of started doing that, and we didn't see a need, I guess. I don't know. I mean, something we talked about. There are various things that we really discussed we wanted to do but never did. So when this whole coronavirus, if you see this years from now, 2020 is the year that nobody wants to talk about already, where we shut down everything for a virus. I'm kind of a stubborn. I'm just a redneck from South Carolina, so I'm kind of plain and simple. And nope, we're going to meet. And then I realized that everybody's shutting down. This is not going to be good. So on a Thursday, we said we better get ready in case we have to. And or Tuesday, I should say. I'm sorry, because the guy that had to do that, our music guy, is a great guy, but he does all this kind of technical stuff too. He's like, I don't know if we can pull that off by then. We talked about different ways to do it. By Thursday, he was up and ready to go, and Saturday we said, yeah, we got to do it. So it happened kind of quickly for us, and actually the first week went really well. We were thinking in one way, and he rethought it and actually was able to do it better than we imagined we could. Now, since everybody went online, of course, new technical difficulties came up. Right. So we've been trying to solve those one at a time, and we started with what was lying around us, and now we've had to buy a piece of equipment or two to make it work. But so far, so good.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I've been interrupting, but most of the difficulties were more technical. We're doing everything with a skeleton crew, people that never, officially or with any training, operate a camera, running cameras, and things like that. So it's a lot of fun. Mostly family members, because trying to expose as few people as possible.
Right. Have you felt like you've been able to stay connected? Has this been received well?
The feedback seems that way. I'm sure, in the best of times, even when everybody's meeting, there's always that person that, as the old saying goes, fell through the cracks, that you hear about occasionally, like, how did we miss them? How did that happen? So there's a greater opportunity for such tragedy now. But we have been calling, hopefully Sunday, we've encouraged Sunday school teachers to stay in touch with their classes. As just pastors, we've called people, we've called the roll, pretty much, especially the most vulnerable people. And classes, some Sunday school classes have met virtually. In fact, the class that I sometimes go to, they're having a virtual fellowship coming up, where we're going to get on one of the, everybody can get on it apps and talk, and so we've tried to stay connected that way. Of course, where there's been needs, we've been trying to fill those, whether they're physical needs or just flat out somebody needs somebody to talk to needs. But we've seen an uptick of people needing food and help, of course. So yeah, but we've. I don't want to ever say we did a great job, because that'll take some time to know that. But but we're doing what we can do, what we know to do. When we hear something, we try to adjust and do it better. So have a little saying I learned from as an 8th grader's 13-year-old basketball coach, and he said, "Good, better, best. Never let it rest till the good's better and the better's best." So I've kind of adopted that in my head. It's like, okay, we'll do the best we can, but we're always trying to improve.
Right. And you said some Sunday school classes. Are there? Do you feel like there's a lot of the teachers have been able to move into the online? Has that been?
It seems so. I've heard that it's not my responsibility necessarily, but I know that some teachers have done that. Yeah. plus we put out as sort of a, if you want to call it a master class, we've been recruiting different teachers to teach 1 week, filming it, and then we put that out
Oh, nice.
on our
Okay, yeah.
Facebook or website,
Yeah.
so that
Just so it's available for everybody, yeah.
if somebody wants a Sunday school lesson, go. So
I like that.
the youth pastor Todd here, he's continued to Sunday Night Live. He just does it on through Zoom, I guess. And they do a live thing, and they get kids interacting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, answer this question or do this, and so that seems to have been a lot of fun for our kids, and yeah.
Is he also throwing whipped cream in people's faces online? Live.
Yeah,
The stereotypical.
I think
youth pastor?
if he asks you to come help him, don't. That's what I would say.
That's funny. What about ministry opportunities? Have you seen more, the same?
Yeah. There, just in general, just in the general public, there's been more people needing food, that kind of help. We've encouraged our membership through email that we provide a place for them to drop off clothes and food during this time, and people donate a lot of stuff. Some people, one person who remains anonymous even to me, called and said, I don't need my government assistance, the new, whatever they called it.
Stimulus?
Yeah, stimulus check. Thank you, that's the word. And I would like to give it to people that maybe have lost their job.
Okay.
So we're putting that through. We already have a benevolent fund in the budget, and it's usually not that, it's a kind of a low amount because we help in many ways. So we've encouraged people, if people ask, hey, how can I give? We say, well, you can do it this way. So we've seen a lot maybe come through that way, and people have been dropping off food to help people that are hungry. And that's, I'm not sure statistically exactly what it is, but it's kind of doubled.
Wow. Okay.
And again, and just in another area, budget-wise, for the whole church, that first week, it was drastically below 50% because there's just a lot of people never changed an old habit of just bringing it, dropping it in a plate or something at church. But it has grown exponentially so that we are catching back up to where we ought to be.
Great.
So it's that's a blessing in and of itself. You still can pay the bills. We can sit here. Electricity's still on. That's great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've drawn back from buying stuff we don't need.
Right.
It's got to be a real need for us to spend money on it outside of anything we already knew about.
Right. Yeah. For us being portable, I've tried to communicate multiple times to multiple people that, well, right now our spending's way down.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a whole lot of spending on, but yeah, the more you had and all that, then that stuff doesn't necessarily stop.
Yeah.
But Calvary's been known as a very benevolent, helpful, ministry-minded church because of its clothes closet and food pantry. So is that stuff, is that able to keep going?
Yeah, that's what's really still been functioning well. And Calvary's blessed in another way, in that, a very smart person knew how to plan for and handle money so that even getting the PPP loans, which I'm glad for those for anybody, we considered getting it, but because we knew we needed to jump on it quickly, so we went ahead and started it. And then we thought through it and said, we can survive without it. So we don't want to take it from somebody who might really need it.
Right.
So in a great way, we were able to just, again, pull back on our expenditures, and with the, I think, reasonable expectation that's not going to last forever, figured we could weather the storm well enough. And, we give a lot of credit to that person who for years has been doing that. So when hardly any sudden expenses caught us by surprise, where we've been able to do that. So I'm grateful for that. I mean, I get a paycheck, so that's good. I'm not adverse to getting less or whatever, if that's what it takes. But because of the generosity of God's people and the wisdom that has been exercised by this church, so therefore we still have resources to give to help people.
Yeah, not everybody's in that same boat. I heard somebody say it was through the SBC. It was a Zoom call I was on. They were talking about that. I believe it was BB&T said 70% of their clients, customers, whatever, that have money in BBT, if they miss 2 weeks of a paycheck, they have no cash. They're bankrupt. And I imagine there's a lot of churches and organizations in that same spot. So it's one, thank you, God's blessing, thank you, generosity, but it's also thank you that we've been good stewards. I mean, there's principles in Scripture for a reason. And
exactly. And this church does zero-based budgeting, which means every January 1 we got zero money, at least in our minds.
Yeah.
And but yet, again, through investing and holding back what are known as designated funds, we have enough designated funds in areas that we can take care of a lot of needs. So.
Awesome. So, speaking of, we're talking about Sunday morning online worship. How is that different right now as far as here? Obviously, it's different for everybody else, but as far as the service itself.
Yeah, we try to do it live, with the preaching and the music, which is good, but if you have a problem like we did last Sunday, not only did we get kicked offline, but what shouldn't have happened, it was a single button, and when it went off, the whole service didn't even get recorded, so we can't even go back and put it back on. We're hoping to do some kind of voodoo magic and pull something, kind of piece it back together, just so we have some historical record. But that's one of the things that was addressed this week. We've got all that fixed now. But so there are those kind of challenges. I fortunately, in my past, did a radio show, so I was used to sitting in front of a microphone in a studio and just talking. And if you can't tell by my hair, Scott Irish, and the Irish part.
You have great hair, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. For 60 years old, it's hanging in there. I don't care if it turns color as long as I don't turn loose. God made it millions of heads. The ugly ones he covered with hair. But anyway, so it's not. But I am I've got the Blarney thing. I can talk a lot, and I do love reading off an audience. So the skeleton crew that is there, poor guys. Thankfully they spread out, try to get apart from each other doing the social distancing, but it's also helpful to me because then it looks like I'm talking to a crowd. Right. But it's actually helped my preaching because I will run a fat rabbit every time it crosses my path. And when I'm looking at a lot of people, if I catch a puzzled look or somebody and I think they didn't understand, I'll back up and I'll take off down that path. And last Sunday, which understand I almost failed preaching class. Like my style, people tend to like my style, but professors don't.
Right.
And so last Sunday, my professors would have liked it. It was technically sound. I didn't get offline. I didn't, I did what I said I was going to do.
We did get offline. You just didn't get off your notes.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't get off the right path. And I thought, wow, I said what I wanted to say. I didn't run too many rabbits. It was really good. And then I found out we didn't even have a record. I was going for once I'm going to listen to this.
The best sermon you've ever preached didn't get recorded. I know that feeling. But nobody ever heard it.
My opinion's not really worth that much. It might not have been good at all, but best I could do. So, but that's what I realized is without a live audience, I tend to be a little more succinct and therefore more clear in what I'm saying. That's the positive. Sounds like,
I've seen that.
Yeah,
I'm for myself. Not I'm paying attention to yours.
So that's something that is good, and hopefully it'll kind of. That's why I was going to go back and listen. It's like maybe this will train me to kind of try to get through what I felt like. I don't want to be closed off to shifting gears if I have to, but there's something to be said for one person. I've heard 1,000 different ways of things, but one preacher said, "Tell them what you're going to say, tell them what you're saying, and then tell them what you just said." Right. That was I tend to tell them what I'm going to say, and then I don't.
Right.
So there was a time in my life, one church, we did 3 services back to back. It started 8, 9:30, and 11. And I'd have 20 minutes in between. By the third one, I was dead. But one guy was always in the sound booth. He never left sound booth. And he told me, he said, all three are different. And I said, well, it's different crowds.
Yeah.
And so I do read off people, and the crowd is out there in the cyber world. I can't see them and respond to that. So I got to kind of plan better on what I'm going to say and then say it.
Yeah, I understand that. So I know there's a little bit of a spectrum. There's some people that are just me and a camera, like a one-on-one conversation they're doing their services right now like that. Some they're trying to be casual, but they still maybe have a couple people doing music, and they still have kind of a sermon. And then others are doing a full-fledged service. Right. They want it to be as normal as possible. Yeah. So you're kind of going for that third approach.
Yeah, and the advantage I was saying, our worship pastor did all the technological stuff of getting online. And the first idea, we were thinking of iPhones and things like that. And we had some cameras. They're not the best in the world, but we have them. And he realized, wait a minute, we can run it through the soundboard. So we have live musicians up there, and it's going live. So we still have kind of live music with the band and usually like a praise team singers or something like that. Not a lot of people. Some guy called and said, I saw the people on stage weren't social distancing. But those singers were all related on those two occasions. So
you can just say
if you happen to be singing this,
it's a trick of the camera.
Yeah, two of them were sisters, other was a mother and son. It was okay. They
thanks for your concern.
Yeah, thank you for being concerned. Right. But anyway, so there's that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so technologically, even with not the state of the art equipment, we've been able to. It sounds good, even if it doesn't look good.
Yeah. So which I've heard, actually, your worship guy Andy said, video is 80% audio.
Yes.
Which is a really funny statement, but I'm sure it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you can't really see it, as long as you can hear it, you'll probably still pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, and you don't want to be like one of those old movies that were translated from another country where the mouths are moving and then you hear some sound.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always a scary thing.
So you mentioned there's a piece of your teaching that you've had to shift, and that's hopefully a positive that maybe you can learn from that. What are other lessons you've learned or opportunities you've found or whatever that you hope doesn't change when things go, quote, back to normal, whatever the new normal will look like whenever we're gathering again?
Well, since we dragged ourselves into the 20th century, I hope we can make the jump into the 21st. And
by next century.
And continue, and I'm sure many churches are going to do the same thing, continue to put it out there that way. A man in the church had a friend in Spain, and he got in touch with them and said, hey, our church is online, you can watch it. And they did. We have a family that are missionaries in Africa.
Oh, cool.
And a couple of weeks ago, an associate pastor came up and he showed me on Facebook they were listening in Africa. So realizing that, we can put it out there and it can go places we don't even think about. So I want to continue to do it, broadcast it live when we're doing it.
Yeah.
And or, the big boys, they record it and it's 2 weeks later because they edit and do things so it doesn't look ugly. But I don't mind looking a little ugly because, reality's ugly. I don't want to get too slick, but I do want to continue to do this because not only that, it gives us a video that we can share with just locally shut-ins, people that, even if you put it on a little cheap flash drive and some local business is kind to you and you can put a bowl up there, a bunch of flash drives in, free sermons, pick it up kind of idea. So I think that's a positive we'd like to continue. The other side of that I hope doesn't happen is some people go, well, I got to go to church. I can sit here in my pajamas and keep watching. Right. So I'm hoping people will make the effort.
Which a lot of people do that anyways.
Yeah. My prediction that I hope is happening is that I see people have a real longing to get back together personally. So I do believe that people will come back, and I think it'll tend more to be a flood back than a trickle back. Either one could happen, but I'm kind of an optimist. So my hope is we see a real surge come back because everybody we miss each other.
Yeah.
The bad thing about any social media has seemed to be in our society that it's separated people. But now that we are forced to be separated from the people we're used to being with, through this, at least in the church, it's created that, wait a minute, I want to actually be able to touch them at some point and be in their presence. And so this may have been a little bit of a cure to an overbalance toward that kind of connectivity to make us realize, hey, let's put the phone down and just talk to each other occasionally. So, it's that may be two positives killing a negative right now.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase, and I shared this past Sunday, I've heard the phrase at least a dozen times, this is a blessing in disguise for a lot of families. Obviously not every family. This is horrible for some families.
Right.
But for many, those kind of the relationships that have increased, the connection that's longing for now that you hope that results in good things later. Do you think and I know we've talked about this topic before a little bit, the consumerism in the American church. Do you think this season of social distance and being online is going to chip away at the consumerism or going to feed consumerism?
I think it'll chip away, and I'm not sure that's the right term for what I'm thinking, but it is related if not. And that is suddenly you realize that all the money you spent on a building may not have been best spent. I think the building ought to be as nice as you can afford, but it doesn't need to be extravagant. And it ought to be nice. You don't want it to be ugly and sloppy. We happen to be in a culture that buildings are important, being able to, meeting together. And again, it's an hour video of teaching. I'm going to condense to a second, which is in the New Testament we see people meeting in small groups all over a city, and yet that was one church. Like the church at Jerusalem, they didn't have a building. 300 years ago, it was against the law to meet as a church, basically. And so they had to meet. And so you had a pastor kind of over a city who trained the pastors of each of the house churches. Similar to what's going on in China right now. So I think though Americans could understand that with our brain, now we see, oh, wait a minute. It's important for us to be together, but we don't need to overextend ourselves for something that, a little bug you can't see cancels the need for it. So hopefully it's torn down some of our idols, and also
sacred cows.
And also, like I said, give a new appreciation. I'm older. I appreciate technology. It doesn't. I'll live or die by it. My kids obviously grew up with it, so it's a bigger deal to them. But to make a better use of it now for us older people like myself to go, but we need this. We need it to be right and good for people that we can reach that we don't even know. And I think when I was younger, we all read in the Bible that the gospel would be preached to the whole world, and people wondered, how's that going to happen? I think it was actually in the 80s, Billy Graham did that through a satellite and did preach to the whole world at once. But, my little church may reach people in Africa or Spain, like I said, and, your church may be reaching people in India and somewhere in Siberia that you don't even realize are finding it, tuning into it. And it'll take heaven to reveal it. And that's always been true. There will be people in heaven because maybe as a young man I spoke to someone and didn't see a result and walked away, but God used that as a thing to bring them later to himself. And then they went somewhere and did, and there are people just as an example, in another church, we were hiring a secretary. I needed a secretary, and this girl came in to be interviewed. And we didn't hire her. She didn't want the job after she interviewed, but when she came in, she sat down and said, this is sort of like coming home. And I said, well, explain that, since I know I've seen you before, but she said, I've come to this church one time. It was for so-and-so's wedding. She said, but when I walked in, something was different. And she was at the rehearsal where I always talk to people before we rehearse the wedding. And whatever I said, God used in her life. It wasn't, I couldn't even tell you what I said. I doubt it was any brilliance on my part. But God used it in her life, and she became a Christian. And she said, I trace it back to coming to that wedding at this church. Who would have ever thought?
Yeah,
it's
cool.
like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. And so, if that was true in that kind of little setting, throwing this out there on where anybody in the world could happen to find it, who knows how God will use me or you or somebody in, podunk, nowhere, United States to read somewhere in another country. You just don't know.
We should write a song about that.
Yeah.
Call it Thank You.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
Let's get somebody else to sing it then. If you don't get that joke, don't ask.
So maybe one last question, and this was I don't know, it can be serious or not, but
I'm rarely serious.
So
unless it's about the book, I'm rarely serious.
So there's a lot of I shouldn't say there's a lot. There's a few categories of thinking with this pandemic. Obviously you have your outliers, your extremes, but one thought is I won't get political or conspiracy theorist. We'll move those aside. But let's say, for sake of argument, that this thing is horrible, and it is this pandemic, and it's making a lot of people sick, and even to the point of death for a lot of people. Is it is it 1 Chronicles 7:14, judgment of God? And if we turn back, what's your line of thinking, and how do you address this to your congregation? Is it that, or is it this is just a product of the fall, and hey, let's just deal with it? Or is this is it something else? I don't know. So is it like
yes
judgment of God, or
well, I don't know enough to call it a judgment from God. But let me reverse engineer that and say, coming from this perspective from underneath instead of from what God is doing. God is obviously doing something, and I think in any circumstance, He's trying to speak to us. The Bible study, Experiencing God, taught us that God will speak to you in 4 ways: through His Word, through prayer, through fellowship of other Christians to kind of confirm what God's telling you, or circumstances. And if you're not reading the Word, you're not praying, and you're not letting godly people speak into your lives, you give God one option. And so for the vast majority of Americans, we probably aren't reading our Word. And among pastors, we're not reading the Word and praying to know God. We're doing it to get a sermon together, to ask God to bless us, but not really biblical praying.
Right.
And we're Americans. We're not listening to anybody. So God's got one option. And so for it, just me personally, in my brain, at 9/11, we saw one day of, dear God, and then we went to war. We ought to do more war on the floor than, war on the field, where the church is saying, if this is from God or not, we need Him. So if nothing else, it reveals to us our need to lean on God.
Yeah, that's good.
So it is a result of the fall. All disease, sickness, hurricane storms, all this is a result of the fall and the flood.
But you're not necessarily picketing, No,
it may not be a particular judgment from God, but God uses all circumstances, according to Romans 8:28. All things, or to those who love God, are working together for, I like to say, our good and His glory, but all things for the good, and that a loving Father only gives good gifts. So if it is from God, which ultimately I believe all things are, then the gift to us is to get our attention to, hey, we've slowed down. We've realized the importance of interconnectivity, of the freedom we had to move about, which has been taken from us, and we want to get back. to meet, to assemble, to worship, to pray, to just be together, to make those gifts that we took for granted precious to us again, I think it is a good deal.
Okay. And what are you teaching on Sunday morning?
Currently, the first 2 or 3 weeks I did like kind of encouraging messages, what to do in trouble type things. And I like to preach through Bible books. So I was in the book of James, and because I didn't know how many people would be able to tune in, all that, I wanted to make sure we got that teaching. And I felt like that was for our church.
That's a good thought.
So, so right now I decided I would pick out some favorite Psalms. Psalms so many times are seen to be poetic and devotional, but there's really some really deep, good truths in there. So last week I did Psalm 1. This week I'll be using Psalm 23. I'll be doing the Repentant Psalm, Psalm 51, hopefully next week. So I'll probably go back to some of what I just said, even in that are we repentant? Are we seeking God in our sin? Because all sin ultimately is against Him. Even if I offend you, I'm offending the God who is your Father and made you. So I'm picking, and I'm hoping that I run out of weeks to preach Psalms before I run out of Psalms to preach, and that we can all be back together and go back to James.
Well, there's a lot of Psalms.
There are. There's 150, so I got 3 years worth. But and if I know we're going to be able to get back together, I'm going to end up on Psalm 150, which is all praise. So
yeah, that's cool.
Just to be, thankful.
Right.
Next week we'll be together. Let's praise Him.
Bring your tambourines.
Yeah, that's right.
Lutes and lyres.
And if you don't have a tambourine, a set of keys or Baptist tambourine, you can jingle it.
So somebody wants to get in touch with you, your church, watch the video.
cbcstanton.org.
Okay.
So that stands for Calvary Baptist Church, cbcstanton.org. Our Facebook is Calvary Baptist-Stanton. And remember, spelled Staunton. And so we are sending it to a service. Currently it's going on to Facebook, and you can just get to it, to the service on our webpage. Eventually we should be on YouTube as well. So
gotcha.
I'm not sure where all we're at currently where we are, but there was this service that I didn't know existed that takes your signal and sends it out to social media, so you don't have to assign yourself to all of those.
Right.
And but the very first week this happened, their subscriptions went up by 8,000, and I'm sure it just kept climbing crazily after that.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there's a lot of churches, but that's how you get us.
I got you. Okay. Well, thanks for your time.
No, it was fun. Thank you.
This is good. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yep.
Hope
Let's
things
get some coffee.
Yeah. Hope things go well Sunday.
Thanks. I appreciate it, man.
All right.